Hey guys, I hope that you're having a good day so far. We are going to be talking a little bit about multiplying with decimals today. So if you want to take out your notebooks, if you are in my first period class, we're going to be entering information on page 38 and 39. If you're in my second period class, we're going to be entering information on pages 30 and 31. You're going to need a couple of things today for this class. You're going to need 2 handouts from the substitute. One, you're going to cut out to look like this. So you notice I didn't cut any of the circles away from the rectangle in the middle, but I did cut out all of the paper. And then the other looks like this. And what I did is I folded this side in, and I folded this side in, and then I cut on the lines so that I have 6 little flaps. If you want to pause the video right now so that you can take some time to cut those out before we begin, that is fine. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to write our learning target at the top of today's page. So again, this is the top of page 38 for my first period, 30 for my second period. So our learning target for today is actually pretty simple, and it says I can multiply with decimals. So if you want to take just a minute and write that down, and then the title of today, if you haven't already guessed, is multiplying with decimals. So there is your learning target and your title. Now, we're going to use this foldable that you cut out, and we are going to highlight some key parts that are important for us to understand. So there are 3 basic steps that you have to remember when you are multiplying with decimals. As you can see from this little foldable, the first one says that we stack our numbers by putting the longest number on top. And I know that sometimes we have the wrong misconceptions when we come from elementary school, but we do want to put the longest number. So not necessarily the biggest number, but the one that has the most digits to it. I also want you to take notice that it says do not line up the decimals. So when we've been working on addition and subtraction of decimals, we said that sometimes you can line up your decimal, and that makes sure that your place values are all lined up. So instead, we're just going to line them up like we would a normal multiplication problem, and we are going to not worry about the decimal places. So we're going to work through an example. Now you can multiply decimals by decimals, and you can multiply decimals by whole numbers, and the same rule applies. Of course, the whole number doesn't have a decimal in it, so you don't have to worry about that. The longest number here is 6.03, so we're going to stack these vertically by putting the longest number on top, and you're going to see that I don't worry about lining up my decimal. Instead, I just stacked my 2 numbers, so I want you to set yours up just like this. It also says make an estimate for what your answer should be close to. You know, we've talked a lot in class about validity of answers. We want to make sure that this is going to be a valid answer when we're finished. So I know that 6.03 is pretty close to 6, and 4.2 is pretty close to 4. So if I multiply those 2 together, that means my answer should be somewhere close to 24 when I'm finished. Step 2 says we multiply the numbers, and I want you to focus on this key point. Ignore the decimals for this step. So we're just going to pretend like the decimals aren't even there. We're going to just multiply our numbers. So I want you to do this with me. We're going to start by doing 3 times 2, which is 6, 0 times 2, which is 0, and 6 times 2, which is 12. That takes care of my 1s, so I'm going to put down a 0 to hold the place of my 2, and then I'm going to work on my 10s place. So 4 times 3 would be 12. Carry your 1. Be really careful here. A lot of students go 4 and 1 makes 5, but 4 times 0 is actually 0, plus 1 is 1, and 4 times 6 is 24. I know that my rules for multiplication say that now I'm going to add these up. So 6 plus 0 is 6. 0 plus 2 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 1 plus 4 is 5. And there's a 0 here, so this just gives me 2. So now that we have completed steps 1 and steps 2, we're going to go to step 3. So this is probably one of the most important pieces of solving a multiplication problem with decimals, is that you've got to know where your decimal goes in your answer. So this says you count the total number of decimal places in your original factors. So we want the total decimal places in the original factors. And then it says you're going to put the decimal point in your product so that it has the same number of places as the total from your factors. So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. So if I go back up here to my original problem, I see that this number had 2 numbers behind the decimal. This number has 1 number behind the decimal. That's a total of 3 decimal places. So I need 3 decimal places. Now, I by no means expect you to write this out for every problem that you do, but we're modeling this today. So that means that I have to start at the end, and I need 3 numbers behind my decimal place. So I'm going to move my decimal from the end of the number until there are 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3, behind the decimal place, and I put my decimal into that location. So my final answer is 25 decimal 326, or 25 and 326 thousandths. Now, we always want to check for validity. So let's go back. We guessed that our answer would be somewhere close to 24. And as you can see, we ended up with an answer of 25. So that's pretty close. And I think that's close enough that we can count that it's a valid question. So we're going to do a couple of examples together here at the bottom of your page. What you're going to do with this foldable, before I do my examples, is you're going to fold in step 1's little ear, or whatever you want to call it, that little circular flap, and step 2, and then step 3. And then this is going to go glued here at the top of your page. So this leaves us some room for examples at the bottom of our page. We're going to do 3 examples together. The first one looks like this: 18.2 times 19. Now, you'll notice that this is a decimal and this is a whole number. This one has 3 numbers and this one only has 2. So when I write this out, this is what it's going to look like. And then I'm just going to multiply. So 9 times 2 is 18. 9 times 8 is 72, plus 1 more would be 73. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 7 more would be 16. Then I'm going to put down a 0 because I'm finished with this 9, so I hold its place value, and I do 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 8 is 8, and 1 times 1 is 1. If it helps you mark out those carried numbers. So then I'm going to add, and I'm going to do, this is 8, then I have 5. That would give me 14, carry my 1, 1, 2, 3. I only have 1 number behind my decimal place, so I'm going to move my decimal here. And that means that my final answer is 345 and 8 tenths. Pretty easy. Here's your next one. So this time we have, let's do a larger one. So 1 decimal 528 times 2 and 1/10. 1 decimal 528 is the larger number. And then we're going to do times 2.1. So 8 times 1 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. 5 times 1 is 5. And 1 times 1 is 1. Now, I haven't been estimating with any of these, but you certainly could. This is pretty close to 2, and this is pretty close to 2, so my answer should probably be somewhere close to 4 when I'm finished. We're done with that first row, so I'm going to put down my 0. 2 times 8 is 16. 2 times 2 is 4, and that extra one makes that 5. 2 times 5 is 10. And 2 times 1 is 2. I almost said 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 more is 3. 8, 10. This is 2, and this is 3. Now I have to put in my decimal places, so I have 3 over here and only 1 here, so that's a total of 4 decimal places. So I need 4 numbers behind my decimal. 1, 2, 3, 4. So my answer for this one is 3 and 2,088 10,000s, and that is pretty close to 4, as you can see. We're going to do one final example. So I want you to write this down. Let's do a word problem. It says every week, feel free to pause the video at the end if you need to write this down. Mark earns $125.65. How much would he earn in a 4-week month? So we know that most months have 4 weeks, so we're going to assume 4 weeks. Again, if you need to pause the video to write that down, go ahead. We're going to pick through this. We're going to pick out our important information. So we know that he earns $125 every week. And this says how much would he earn for 4 weeks worth of work. So that means that this problem looks like this, times 4 weeks. And then it's a matter of solving it. So 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 6 is 24. Plus 2 more would be 26. 4 times 5 is 20. Plus 2 is 22. 4 times 4 times 2 is 8. Plus 2 more is 10. 4 times 1 is 4. Plus 1 more is 5. I sincerely hope I'm doing my math correctly. Now I only have 2 numbers behind my decimal place, so I'm going to move my decimal over. And because this is a word problem, we have to make sure that it answers the question. It says, how much would he earn in a 4-week month? So my answer has to be money. So I'm going to say my answer is $502.60. Now that's very important because sometimes you'll get numbers that are long decimals and you have to make sure that they actually look like money. So that goes back to your rounding rules that you learned in elementary school. So if I work out a problem and we're looking for money and I have 42.6583, I can't answer the question with that. I have to make it look like money, and we know that money has a decimal place and then 2 numbers behind it. So these 2 numbers aren't going to change. They're going to stay as 42. The 6 is going to stay, but this 5 is either going to stay the same or it's going to round up to the next number. These are rounding rules. I look at the 8, and you should know, you have lots of little ways to remember it, but you should know that the 8 makes the 5 go up to the next number. So that means that I would answer this with my question of how much money would that be. So I need you to pay close attention to that as you're working on word problems. So again, in your notebook, if you are my first block, then this is page 38. And if you are my second block, then this is page 30 in your notebook. And you can go on to the next video, which is going to show you what you need to do on the next page of your notebook. Thanks.